What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another Swift video. Today we're going to be doing a introduction to SwiftUI, the basics and essentials. So if you're not familiar, SwiftUI is this new framework Apple released last year in 2019, and it lets you create these really nice looking user interfaces in a simple way with this declarative syntax. And back in the day, and even now, it was pretty daunting to go and get started with iOS. It was a lot of code, storyboards weren't super reliable, and there was a whole host of just complexity. But you can see with this snippet of code here that it looks pretty simple. So a lot of people have been jumping in. So I figured, why not take some time out and do a SwiftUI Essentials video. We will make something and talk about the core concepts. So all of that said, let me stop blabbering on and let's jump right into the video. So we're gonna, of course, open up Xcode. If you don't have it, go ahead and download it from the Mac App Store or Apple's developer website. You're gonna create a new project. It'll be a single view app, and we are going to call this project My First Swift UI App. Go ahead and make sure the interface is on SwiftUI, and of course the language is Swift. Hit enter twice to create and save the project, and let's jump right in. So let me expand my Xcode window here to give ourselves some more room to work. And the first thing you'll notice is we have our code here and our canvas here. And something really cool about SwiftUI is as we edit our code, and if you hit the resume button, you can actually see the code in action here real time on a device. And we're going to be using this preview as we code to make sure the code we're adding gives us the correct results. So we're going to start by actually looking at how we can change this device over here, because this is an older device and we need to be working on the newer devices because we're cool like that. So what you can go ahead and do is add a modifier to this content view in the preview provider here. And you want to change the preview device. And what you want to pass in here is a preview device. Open up the initializer. And with a string, you can actually pass in which device you'd like to show. So you see there, we passed an iPhone 11 and we got the iPhone 11 here. So what you actually just saw there with this dot, and let me actually highlight and do a Control-I to align it properly, this is called a modifier. So Swift has a concept of there are these core elements, in this case we have content view, and you can add modifiers to them. So we get started with this hello world text here. And over here, we have a text object with hello world as a string, and we can add modifiers to this. So one modifier, for example, is foreground color, and we can specify red. And you can see the text over here change to red. So we're going to be looking at various modifiers and how to combine these like elements to create more complex, nicer looking views. The other thing I'll call out before we get nitty gritty into the code is you can hit this plus button up here and see this whole library of the things that are available to you. So a big challenge when you're starting off, learning and you're in the beginning stages of just picking up iOS, you don't really know what tools are at your disposal and what elements. And what's really great about this is you can actually search for whatever you want. So let's say we want to add a list. We can search for list and we see we have a list and a form here, and it gives you a little description. And if we want to add a list, we can simply actually drag it in, which is really cool. And for the list, what we're going to actually do, after I fix this alignment and put this back here, we're going to move this text into our list element. And we're going to say this list is going to iterate from 0 up until 10. And you can see over here, nothing actually changed. And it's also complaining here because we need to actually put underscore in because the list passes in the index. And you can see the live update occurred here. The other thing about this preview, which is cool that you can do, is you can hit this little play button and this will actually be much more real time as you are editing code here. So if we go ahead and change this to be blue, and if we add another modifier for font, and if we say the font, let's see, font weight, and let's do bold, you can see the things just update much faster here. So what are we going to build? We are going to build a list of images with titles. So a table view, if you're familiar with the traditional way of building things. And once we tap on something, we're going to show another screen, which is going to have some more information about that image and the title, a description, etc. So I took the liberty of grabbing some images from Google Images, and we want to first bring them into our project. So we're going to go to this XC assets thing over here, which holds all the assets we want to bring in. Right click, and we're going to do new image set. And we want one image set per each of these images. So the first one is going to be beach 1, and I'm going to drag in this guy. The next one is going to be beach 2, and I'm going to drag in this guy. And I was debating doing this before the video, dragging these in, but I think it's valuable to see, especially for those that are starting off, on how to bring this stuff in and name things and whatnot. So we brought in the car there. I see a dog picture. Let's bring in this guy. And I see a wedding below it. So let's bring that in. And let's see, I think it's a fountain I see. So let's bring a fountain in. Hopefully I spelled that right. Let's bring in this fountain over here. And lastly, I think that's the last one for, let's call it nature. And let's bring in this one. So how many do we have? We got 1, 3, 6, 7. So it looks like we have all of our assets in here. So we can once again expand our window. And now we can actually jump right into some code. So if you ever come back to the content view and the preview is gone, as they call it, you can just hit the resume button and it will come back. And let's start building out our view. So we already looked at how to create a list. Now, how do we add an image to this? Well, as you guessed, there is an image object, and we can simply pass in a name of our image. So we put in beach 1 there, and we're going to go ahead and hit resume, and we see our beach image came in. And I'm going to go ahead and hit this little play icon so we don't have to keep hitting resume. And we see an issue right off the bat. The image is pretty big, and the alignment just looks kind of funky. So we need to actually adjust this. And right now we also hard coded in our image name. So that's not really going to fly, right? When we have a bunch of different data, we want to be able to pass in our data. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a struct for data, and it needs to be identifiable. We need to add an ID, which is going to be a UUID, which is a unique identifier. Identifiable allows us to use this struct for a model in our list. And we're going to add some properties onto our data object here. So we're going to want a title, an image name. We are going to want a image description. And we will also add an image taken date. And in our view, what we want is we're going to want a property in here for items. And this is going to be an array of data. And in our list, we can actually pass in the items. We can say data in. And for the text, we can now, instead of showing this static text, we can say data dot image title. Is that what I call this? Looks like we just called the title. And for the image name can be data dot image name. And let's make sure we called it the correct thing. Image name. Now, down here, you see this is complaining now because we need to pass in this items collection to this content view. And we're trying to create this content view without items. So if you start typing here, it tells us that we want to pass in an array of items. So let's go ahead and create those data objects. So we're going to say data. The first one is going to be beach 1. The image is going to be beach 1. And we'll say this is a beach. The next thing is going to be a date. We'll just say January 1st, 2020. And I'm going to copy and paste this to save us some time. So we had 7 images, I believe. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You can fix up the indentation by highlighting and hitting Control I. And let's go ahead and change all of the data in here. So beach 2, we had a dog. We had a car. We had a nature picture. Let's do nature. What else did we have? We had a wedding, I think. Wedding, and the last one was a fountain. Fountain. And we should change the descriptions too, but we'll come back and do that. Go ahead and hit resume over here, and let's see what it looks like now. Wow, it looks like nothing right now because it looks like we have an error somewhere in here. So let's hit this error and let's see what it's complaining about. It's complaining about the content view in here. And the reason it's complaining there is because we need to pass in that items array there. So the easy workaround for now is instead of making this just a definition, we're going to say initially this items is empty collection. And now if you go ahead and hit resume over here, it shouldn't complain about that issue. And we should get our preview refreshed. So we can see that we actually see all of our images, but they're quite large. It pushes our text off screen and we can't click on them and do anything useful. So let's fix all that. So you can see that we can scroll actually in the simulator, even though it's a preview and not a simulator. And the reason is because we have the play button here. So it's really nice to have this alongside our code as we build. So now we're going to use modifiers like these on our image to properly size it. So the first thing we're going to use is resizable. And we're going to use a frame off of that to provide a width, a height, and an alignment. So I'm going to say 100, 100, and centered. And you see now we're looking much nicer. Now we also kind of want to give this whole screen a title. So what I'm going to do is we want to embed this whole list into a navigation view. So we can do it through code, or you can actually go ahead and command click it. And there should be an option to embed. So we have embed in list, we have embed in VStack and HStack. So what I wanted to illustrate is sometimes you'll have an embed in navigation view here. It looks like it's not showing up this time for us. So we are going to do a command X to copy this, create a navigation view, and go ahead and paste that in there. Now you might be asking, what did that do? Because it looks like it did nothing over here. Well, the first thing it did is it added this navigation bar. So now what we can do is say navigation bar title, and let's call this photos. And you can see we have our title up here now. Let's control I this to fix that indentation. So you notice that everything is either a modifier or a root level object. So it's very, very redundant, and it's a really good pattern. Once you pick it up once, it becomes very natural. Now let's see, what else do we want? We want to format this text to look a little nicer. It's already bold, but let's go ahead and make this a secondary color. Let's do primary actually. Primary probably looks good. And primary basically adapts to dark mode, and we'll take a look at dark mode towards the end of this video because that's something that's really cool too. Now we want to be able to tap onto these and do something, which would be go to another screen and show some more data about our data at that cell. So what we want to do is we want to actually take both of these and embed it in a navigation link. And we create a navigation link with a destination and is active we don't actually even need. This we don't even need. And actually, let me grab this navigation link from our library up here, just so you guys can see that we can not only type it in, but we can actually just simply grab it from here and drag it into our code, and it stubs everything out for us. So we're gonna put in the things we copied into here, and we're gonna change this to a view. So we're just gonna provide a basic text view here. And this is the view that it will push us to on the screen once we tap it. So you notice when we did that, we actually got these little arrow indicators. So now we can actually tap into a view, and it actually does the animation for us. It actually embeds everything nicely in the navigation controller. We can swipe back, and it's looking pretty nifty. So what do we want to do now? So we also want to embed this in a container. So there are a variety of containers, as you probably already noticed. We have a navigation view, we have a list, and there is a horizontal stack, a vertical stack, and a z-axis stack. So let me look at horizontal stack. This will make sure that the elements are aligned horizontally. We could also do a v-stack, and you notice now things are aligned vertically. So let's go ahead and stick with h-stack. And let's go ahead and create another view that is actually going to be shown when we tap on a cell instead of this basic text, which is static. So we're going to basically copy this whole thing, and we're going to create another view and go ahead and delete everything in here. And what we want to do is we're going to pass in a data item. So we're going to say data, and this is going to be data. And this is complaining right now because we're not returning any views inside of it, but let's go ahead and change this to be data view. And we're going to first create a vertical stack, and we're going to have a text, and we're going to show in the text data dot title. And let me actually go ahead and use this before we design this screen more. So we can actually now pass in this data view. And if you open up the constructor, we can pass in data, and we're going to pass in the current data item. So now over here, if you tap it, we get to a screen. We still only show a label, and it looks like we're still only showing some text. So let me actually go ahead and hit resume over here. And now if we tap on one of these, we should get the associated title showing. So that's cool. Now let's actually show the description and the date as well. So the first thing actually that I think I'm going to want to do is we're going to say, instead of adding text for the title, let's show it at the top of the screen. So we are going to give this a modifier. Let's put some text in here. We're going to give this a modifier of navigation bar title. And we're going to pass in the title for data there. And what do we want to show in this vertical stack? So the first thing I guess we can show is the image. And the image is going to be data.image name. And let's see what happens when we click on it, what it looks like. Looks like it takes up the whole screen right now. So let's go ahead and make this resizable. And how do we want to resize it? So let's see, we have resizable, there's interpolation, there's resizable with insets. So we're going to say resizable with a frame. I'm going to stick with the width, height, and alignment. So let's say the width of this will be 200, height will be 100, alignment will be centered. Let's see what this looks like now. Looking good. All right, the other thing we want to do is we want to give this a modifier of aspect ratio. And we want to maintain the aspect ratio. So we're going to say the aspect ratio is going to be content mode, and we want to fit. So let's see why this isn't cooperating. So aspect ratio. So let me go ahead and move this down below this because it looks like this is complaining. Let's put this here. And let's see, sometimes SwiftUI can be a little annoying. So let's put aspect ratio and fit right there. All of our errors should go away. And let's go ahead and make sure this is still running, which it is. Looks like the image is kind of small. So let's make this a little taller. Let's also give this a width of, let's say 300. So let's say 400. Let's say 500 actually. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, much better. So now let's add some more stuff in here. So we want to add a description. So it's going to be text with data.image description. Whoops. Data.image description. And then we also want to add a spacer, which simply adds some space, as the name implies. We're going to add another text, and this is going to be image taken date. Let's use the padding modifier, to give this guy some padding, and we can say the length of the padding is, let's say, 5. Control I to fix that indentation. Let's add the padding to this guy as well. And let's see, let's put an enter there. Let's go ahead and hit one of these and see what this looks like now. So cool, so we have our description showing up here. We have our date showing up at the bottom. Let's go ahead and make our description longer and see what that looks like. So the spacer allows us to basically get the space, like I mentioned, between those two texts. So if we didn't have it, you'll see that the text for the date is right below the other text, and it kind of looks nicer if we utilize the spacer and give ourselves some more room. So that's looking pretty good. Something I don't like that we want to adjust over here is these corners on the images are a little sharp and they don't look very, very nice to the eye. So let's go ahead and on this image in our list, let's go ahead and add another modifier for corner radius, and we're going to say 10. And if you look at that, it actually rounds it right there for us. So with very little code, I would say, barring this collection of this mock data that we have passed in, we have been able to create this really nice looking table view. If you're familiar with the traditional way of building things, no protocols, no delegates, no data source, none of that outlet wiring up, we can basically just create it like so. We can tap onto something and see our image, the description, and the time down below. We get the swipe back functionality for free. If I can grab the corner here, looks like it's gonna be difficult. Let's try that one more time. There it goes. It's very hard to grab the corner here. Let's go ahead and make these descriptions slightly longer to see what that looks like. So I'm gonna just copy and paste this for the beach. Same thing for this guy. And we can say this is a dog. Let me copy and paste this as well. Car. And I think that's good enough for now. So if we go ahead and let's say hit the car one, we can see that we have our text showing up here. And it looks like it's actually trailing off the edges of the screen. And the reason it's doing that is because we created a fixed width for our image. And what we really want to do is we can use our frame modifiers to get the current width, but I'm just going to make this smaller for the sake of this video. And if we go ahead and click into it, now you'll see that the text doesn't actually trail off the screen and it wraps to multiple lines. And it's a little small, so let's go ahead and give this a font size and make it bigger. So I'm going to give it a font, and let's see, it looks like we have font weight, and we can do a font and use one of these standard fonts. So let's use, let's use large title. Let's see how obnoxiously big that is. So kind of big, but hopefully that illustrates the points. We can also make our image slightly bigger. It'll be a square now, so if we tap into it, you'll see that it is slightly bigger, but it still maintains its aspect ratio, so things are not distorted. And the next thing I'll cover, and we'll actually wrap up after this, is how do we check dark mode? So we have this whole preview thing going on over here, but what if we want to check out what this looks like in dark mode? So we can use a modifier called environment. And this is one of the really, really powerful things about SwiftUI. Back in the day, and by back in the day, I mean like still now, you would have to run this with different configurations, but what you could actually do is set up different environment properties like color scheme. And actually, you'll see that your preview over here will update in real time. So let me actually move this before the preview device. And let's see why this is complaining. This should be color scheme, if I'm not mistaken. And let's get rid of this iPhone 11. Let me see why this is complaining. Use of undeclared operator. That's because this should go before this guy. And this should be a lowercase color scheme. And if you look at that, it actually changed to dark mode. Now, something that might be annoying is you might not want to create, rather change the environment every time you're looking at this. So if you want to be lazy like me, you can copy this whole thing and we can put a group here. Go ahead and paste that into the group and scroll down and paste it one more time. And go ahead down here and let's change the color scheme to be light. And let's change this to be iPad Pro. And now what you can actually do on the right-hand side over here, if we stop running this by hitting the pause button, you'll actually see that up here we have an iPhone, and it looks like we don't have the iPad down here because this raw value doesn't exist. So let's do iPad Air 2. Let's see if that one exists. And it looks like we have this iPad here. So give it a second to actually load up. Let's hit that play button. So it's still loading there. Sometimes it takes a few seconds, but the point is you can actually keep multiple preview devices. And right now it's showing only one because we have this hit, but let's just actually change this back to the iPhone 11 so I can illustrate the example. So we have the dark mode, we have light mode. We can see that our app is supporting both. We can scroll between them. And yeah, that's kind of a really quick, essential look at SwiftUI. So you can create these views by simply declaring what they should look like. You can use the modifiers to style them. You can give things colors, font sizes. You can set up navigation, like we're tapping on go ahead and hit this play button. We're tapping on a cell and going to a new screen. So you can set that up by using different views, like we created this data view here. You can create model objects and pass them around to encapsulate your data. And the coolest part of this, in my opinion, you can use this preview provider to look at your app as you build it, interact with it right here, instead of having to run it in the simulator every single time. So if you want to run it in a simulator, you're absolutely welcome to do so by selecting a simulator, hitting this play button here. But something you'll find after your app actually loads is because we're using the preview data over here, if the simulator doesn't decide to take too long, you won't actually see the data in here because you're actually not providing the data in the real app. You're only providing the data in this preview provider thing. So I definitely recommend using this guy if you can. That said, if you haven't smashed that like button down below already for the YouTube algorithm, make sure to do so. Helps out quite a bit. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. I post daily for Swift videos. Comment if you have any questions, concerns, errors. I try to reply to every single comment within a few days. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.